Okay, picture the absolute richest person you can possibly imagine. Are you picturing a modern tech billionaire, an old-school industry tycoon, maybe an ancient emperor? Well, what if I told you that the absolute wealthiest person to ever walk the earth isn't anyone you're ever going to find on a Forbes list? In today's Explainer, we are uncovering a historical figure whose wealth was so staggeringly off the charts, it honestly sounds like a myth.
So, who exactly was this person? We are talking about an individual whose wealth was so immense and his spending so unbelievably lavish that he literally broke a major global economy just by passing through town. And you know what the craziest part is? He didn't even do it out of malice. He did it out of sheer, uncontainable generosity.
Now, this completely subverts what we're usually taught in history class. When we think of vast historical fortunes, our minds immediately jump to, European kings or Roman emperors. Well, scratch that. This unimaginable wealth actually belonged to an African king. He ruled a massive kingdom that the Western world hadn't even managed to map yet. His name was Mansa Musa.
And before we dive into his backstory, I really want you to let this number sink in for a second. 12 years. When Mansa Musa took a trip and traveled through Egypt, he gave away so much of his gold along the road, just freely and joyfully handing it out, that the Egyptian economy was severely damaged for 12 whole years. Just think about that. One man's casual generosity crippled a major regional economy for over a decade. How does someone even acquire that level of wealth in the first place?
Section 1. The Gold and Salt Empire.
So let's rewind to around the year 1280, when Musa was born into a place of absolute geographical luck. The Mali Empire sat perfectly situated between two of the ancient world's most incredibly vital resources. Down in the south, you had literal fields of gold, just right there in the rivers and the soil. Traders had been crossing the harsh Sahara for centuries just to get their hands on it. But up in the north, hidden in the dry, blazing heat of the desert, were enormous mountains of salt. Now back then, salt was basically as precious as gold, because it was absolutely essential to preserve food and stay healthy. And the Mali Empire? It sat right smack in the middle of all this, heavily taxing every single caravan that passed through.
The person who controlled this incredibly lucrative, heavily taxed trade route held the absolute authority of Mansa. It literally translates to King of Kings. Over generations, thanks to this perfect geographic monopoly on gold and salt, the Mali Empire grew into one of the wealthiest and most powerful kingdoms on Earth.
Section 2. Into the Unknown Ocean.
Now here is a really fascinating twist. Musa was actually never supposed to rule. He was just a quiet, studious deputy. But the king before him, he was this highly adventurous guy, totally obsessed with finding out what lay across the great Atlantic Ocean. So he built this enormous fleet of 2,000 boats, filled them with sailors and supplies, sailed west, and never returned. Just vanished. And just like that, the 30-year-old deputy became Mansa Musa, instantly inheriting the wealthiest empire on the planet.
Section 3. A pilgrimage like no other.
Musa ruled quietly and effectively for years, but then, in 1324, he decided to make the sacred Hajj to Mecca, and let me tell you, he did not slip away quietly. After 2 whole years of meticulous planning, he left with a caravan of 60,000 people. 60,000! That is a moving river of humanity stretching across the crushing heat of the Sahara Desert. Leading him were 500 servants, and get this, each one was holding a solid golden staff, catching the desert sun. And then came the actual treasury, 80 camels, with each one lugging 300 pounds of gold dust. That gold alone was worth way more than the entire treasuries of most European kingdoms combined.
Section 4. Crashing the Egyptian economy.
Everywhere they stopped, Musa handed out gold. To the poor, to teachers, to ordinary workers. He just gave it away like a river gives water. But the ultimate climax happened when this massive golden column arrived in Cairo, Egypt. Musa ended up staying for 3 months, buying up goods and handing out gold, and in the process, he accidentally kicked off a disastrous economic chain reaction. Here's how it went down. Step 1. A massive, unprecedented influx of gold enters the Cairo market. Step 2. Because of simple supply and demand, gold completely loses its value. Step 3. Everyday prices skyrocket in this historic wave of inflation. Merchants lost their profits, and everyday people literally couldn't afford food. Like we mentioned earlier, it took the Egyptian economy 12 full years just to recover from his extreme generosity.
Section 5. A City of Knowledge.
But look, Musa's legacy isn't just about spending unimaginable amounts of money. On his way back to Mali, he hired a brilliant Andalusian poet and architect named Abu Ishaq al-Sahili.
Musa convinced him, with 200 pounds of gold by the way, to come back to Mali and help transform the city of Timbuktu. Together, they designed the famous Djinguereber Mosque. And the genius here is the technique of using dried mud brick. Now, that might sound primitive to us today, but it was highly advanced architectural adaptation. It stayed perfectly cool in the blazing desert heat and warm at night. In fact, parts of this incredible structure are still standing today, 700 years later.
But the true treasure Musa built, he wasn't made of gold or even mud brick. It was made of knowledge. He funded massive libraries and brought in top-tier teachers from all over the Islamic world. The Sankore Mosque in Timbuktu actually grew into a massive, world-renowned university. At its peak, it housed 25,000 students learning mathematics, astronomy, medicine, law, and philosophy. 25,000 people studying together in the heart of West Africa, all while European maps were still showing the area as just empty, blank space.
It actually took decades after Musa's death for the outside world to finally catch up to what was happening. In 1375, a mapmaker in Spain created the famous Catalan Atlas. And right there, dead center in West Africa, they finally drew him. A great African king, sitting on a throne wearing a crown and holding up a massive golden nugget. The map read, "This king is the richest and most powerful king in all the land." He had always been there, brilliant and powerful. The rest of the world just simply hadn't been looking.
Mansa Musa built an empire of gold, for sure, but ultimately his most lasting investment was in the minds of his people. Knowledge, much like the language you use to understand the world, is a treasure you can never lose and you can never spend away. It really only grows more valuable the more you acquire. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. What knowledge are you adding to your personal treasury today? Keep learning, keep building, and thank you so much for joining me to explore the absolutely incredible life of Mansa Musa.